Dear listeners, welcome to the 11th story in the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, The Final Problem. This is the most famous, most emotional, and most consequential story in the entire Sherlock Holmes canon. It is the epic confrontation between Sherlock Holmes and the greatest criminal mastermind he has ever faced, Professor James Moriarty, the Napoleon of crime. It is a tale of intellect against intellect, a deadly game of cat and mouse across Europe, and a final, fateful meeting at the edge of the roaring Reichenbach Falls in Switzerland. Narrated by Dr. John H. Watson with a heavy heart, this adventure marks a turning point not only in Holmes's life, but in the entire world of detective fiction. It is filled with tension, sorrow, friendship, and a sense of inevitable tragedy. From the quiet declaration in Baker Street to the misty cliffs and thundering waters of the Reichenbach Falls, every threatening note, every shadow in the fog, every step on the mountain path, every moment of danger, and every brilliant move in this deadly game will be brought to life here in rich, vivid, and extended detail. This is the story where the game reaches its most dangerous and heartbreaking height. Settle in, dear listeners, for this is the final problem. Opening scene. The shadow of Moriarty falls over Baker Street. It was the spring of 1891. London was wrapped in its usual veil of fog and smoke, but inside 221B, Baker Street, an even heavier shadow had fallen. I, Dr. John H. Watson, had seen little of my friend Sherlock Holmes for several weeks. When I finally visited him, I was shocked by his appearance. He was pale, thin, and clearly under immense strain. His eyes were restless, constantly glancing toward the window and the door as though expecting danger at any moment. Holmes closed the shutters carefully, locked the door, and turned to me with grave seriousness I had rarely seen in him. "Watson," he said in a low, steady voice. "You have heard me speak of Professor Moriarty?" I had heard the name only once or twice before, mentioned in passing as a shadowy figure. Holmes now described him in detail. A man of extraordinary intellect, a mathematical genius who had written a treatise on the binomial theorem at the age of 21, and the hidden organizer of nearly all that was evil in the criminal underworld of London. Moriarty was the Napoleon of crime, the central force behind countless robberies, blackmail schemes, and murders, yet he remained almost untouchable, operating through layers of agents while keeping his own hands clean. Holmes told me that he had been engaged in a deadly, silent struggle with Moriarty for months. He had come very close to destroying the professor's entire criminal empire. Now Moriarty was hunting him relentlessly. 3 separate attempts had already been made on Holmes's life in the past few days: a falling brick, a runaway cab, and a thug with a bludgeon. With deep emotion in his voice, Holmes said, "This is the end, Watson. Moriarty will not rest until one of us is destroyed. If I can bring him down, it will be the greatest achievement of my career. But I may not survive this battle. I have come to the conclusion that my career has reached its crisis, and I am ready to face it." The deadly pursuit across Europe the next day, Holmes and I left London secretly, hoping to evade Moriarty's network. We traveled first to Brussels, then to Strasbourg, always looking over our shoulders. Holmes remained watchful and alert at every station and every hotel. He knew Moriarty was following us, a silent and deadly shadow. We finally reached the village of Meiringen in the Swiss Alps. The scenery was breathtaking: towering snow-capped peaks, green valleys, and the mighty Reichenbach Falls, where the water roared down into a deep, misty chasm with terrifying force. One afternoon, while exploring the path beside the falls, a Swiss messenger boy brought a letter to Holmes. It claimed that an English lady staying at the hotel was dying and urgently needed a doctor. I left Holmes at the falls to attend to the patient. But when I reached the hotel, there was no sick woman. I had been tricked. My heart filled with dread. I rushed back to the Reichenbach Falls as fast as I could. There, on the narrow, slippery path beside the roaring waterfall, I found Holmes's alpine stock leaning against a rock. His silver cigarette case lay nearby. Inside it was a note addressed to me. In Holmes's clear, steady handwriting, he wrote that he had known the letter was a trap set by Moriarty, but had chosen to face him alone. He praised our friendship, expressed his admiration for my loyalty, and said this was the end. 2 sets of footprints led to the edge of the path, and none returned. Holmes and Moriarty had fallen together into the abyss, locked in mortal combat. Watson's heartbreaking grief. I stood there for a long time, stunned and heartbroken, listening to the thunder of the falls below. The mist rose like ghosts around me. With a heavy heart, I made my way back to England, carrying the news that the world had lost its greatest detective. For 3 long years, I mourned my friend, believing him gone forever. But as we now know from later events, Sherlock Holmes had survived the fall through a hidden ledge on the cliff face. He had spent the next years in hiding, traveling the world to destroy the remaining members of Moriarty's criminal organization, waiting for the right moment to return. Closing narration, and so, dear listeners, ended The Final Problem, the story that shook the world of Sherlock Holmes and left millions of readers in mourning. It was the ultimate battle between two titanic intellects, a confrontation that many believed marked the end of an era. Though we now know Holmes survived and would return in later stories, at the time Dr. Watson and the world believed they had lost the greatest detective the world had ever known. This story remains one of the most emotional, powerful, and unforgettable moments in the Sherlock Holmes saga. Thank you for listening to this detailed and extended audiobook narration of The Final Problem, the 11th story from the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, share, and turn on notifications. The game is always afoot, even beyond the Reichenbach Falls.